This is Kitten Features, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in his student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wade in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Oh, don't do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as I keep playing it there, because I was like, wait a second, what am I doing? And I was like, no. Stop that. Hit the wrong button. My bad, everybody.
The first time that's ever happened.
Well, because I was sitting there like finger hovering over the controls for the next transition over, and then I just kept like hitting it like, Wayne, that is not the button. Why do you keep hitting it? Stop it.
It's a double show Sunday, apparently.
Man, look at that, noobish. That's what happens when I go from having you right here where it's all nice and easy sitting right next to me to having you virtually in again via the Skypes. Ah, man.
So, yeah, I was talking to Ken and a few others about this idea of moving to somewhere else, right? Because at some point, I'm not going to be in Michigan forever, right? So at some point, I want to move to a different place, probably in the U.S., and we kind of agreed that Colorado would be neat, and we would love to go there one day, but it's probably not going to be the next destination because I promised Kitten that we would go to Michigan on the premise that the next place we go to is going to be a beach. We're going to live on the beach. That's what we promised. That's what I promised her, and that's
beach.
I can't break that.
Mountains. I mean, come on.
Oh, it's not what I want. It's not what I want. It's about what we want.
You know, we just got to bring Kitten out here for a little bit so we can go play. And see if she maybe expands her options as to what the next destination could be. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's lots of opportunities there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, Ken, how you doing today?
I'm pretty good, yeah. We were just saying before the show, it's weird that we had the show last week in person. It's weird going back to online only. It's especially weird seeing that room that I was previously in, eating far too much hot sauce, and and seeing it from a new perspective. Now that it's it's not just a backdrop anymore; it's a real room. You know?
Yes, you actually can know what's on the other side of the camera now, and everything that's in here.
Through all those big tubes of the internet, yeah. So yeah, things are good. It was sad leaving you on Monday. So after the show ended, we hung out the rest of the Sunday, and then Monday Wayne very kindly took me to downtown, and we went out for breakfast, went out for lunch, and we had a look around the town and explored the different areas. I saw some of the poverty of the area, which made me very sad, as it always does. That's not a Denver thing. That's an American thing, right? Like it's like if you go to any place of population of more than 500,000, you'll suddenly see a lot of homeless and such.
It's a relative metric. That's the challenge. Is that it may feel like lots, but it's always relative to where you're at. Because like Denver, in all honesty, we don't have a very large population that is poor. We're actually fairly affluent here, but you go to some other areas and you'll find everywhere poverty kind of thing. And so I always kind of think that, yes, I purposely took you, Ken, through like a good example of one end to the next of what it's like in Denver, specifically focusing on one of the oldest, longest roads in Denver, which is Colfax Avenue, starting all the way on the east end, which admittedly starts on one of the poorer sides, traveling into where it's kind of the middle of Aurora, Colfax, which is definitely poor, and then as it transitions into eastern Denver, into the city, and it starts going up into more just city and stuff like that. So you did get to see a pretty wide swath of what's happening around. Whereas the further you go away from Colfax, it's significantly less poor throughout Denver. And the greater Denver suburb area. So you did see kind of a focused bit of it.
Yeah, it was. There was definitely a wide range, right? Like saw places that were very old, saw places that were very rich, saw places that were both, saw places that were opposite of both. And it was an interesting mix. And it's, like I said, it's just hard coming from the UK where we do have a homeless problem, but like comparatively we don't. Right, I mean, I think there are a few thousand homeless people in the UK, in total. Right, maybe not quote me on that. I don't know for certain. But coming from a place where only in the biggest cities, even then, it's not that many. It's kind of crazy seeing that. I'm sorry, I'm completely wrong. There's 320,000 homeless in the UK. I'm probably thinking of the numbers for Glasgow.
Well, one of the challenges you run into in general, it's also dependent on how each city, each country handles the problem. Because this is something that I very specifically, there's a great anime, not Ken that you would have followed, but that is a slice of life anime that doesn't go into anything outrageous. It's just telling like an animated story. And it's called, I want to say it's like Godfathers of Tokyo or something like that. It's something with Godfathers that talks about the homeless problems in Japan, which is crazy because when you're in Japan, when I was in Tokyo and all around, I didn't see a single homeless person while I was there. It's not that they don't exist. It's how the country deals with it, where they as a country don't speak of it, for one, and there are very specific locations where it takes place. So it is different, and every country has their own challenges. And so, yep, that is a thing to be aware of.
Now, okay, so apparently I'm completely wrong. So I just looked up the statistics, and so, for example, the worst in the world is Grenada. Grenada has 56% people are homeless because of the massive hurricane in 2004. There are still apparently 56% homeless. But apparently in the US, there is 0.17% homelessness. And in the UK, it's 0.46%. So I must be thinking about Scottish figures as opposed to British figures, maybe. Or again, maybe it's just hidden away and I don't see it as much. Plus, I think the number of people who are helped, who are homeless, with food and with shelter and medical care is much higher than in the US as well. I'm pretty sure the care that they receive in the UK is more. But apparently my own understanding of the homeless problem in the world is massively misinformed. So I need to read up more on that myself because I've been quoting figures that are BS.
Part of the challenge is definitely what you see, right? And where it's at. Because the problem was I took you part places where you didn't actually see as much homeless as you might have thought, but you definitely saw more poverty. It's just the area around that we drove through was definitely lower income. And so it wasn't that anyone in that area in East Colfax was homeless. You just saw people that were living in conditions you would probably not yourself allow yourself to live in. You wouldn't know what to do with yourself in that case. So that's also a different statistic. I think if you're to look at more specifically poor or what poverty level and stuff like that, it might be also more informative. And then Babs is talking and saying in California, the issue is that we have gentrified the area homeless used to hang out, pushing them to the streets and freeway underpasses. So that's part of it too, is like where they end up going, because those percentages will still be around, but it's whether they have places that are safe to congregate or not, or else if they get dispersed, they'll end up somewhere. And it's a huge challenge. And we, through that, we were having conversations about kind of what do you do as a society to try to help those that are in, poverty or suffering in such ways. And it's a tough challenge. That's one of the real problems. There's no one good answer for it. And it takes, I don't know, it's kind of like saying there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing you can do that'll fix the problem, because there's a lot of things that lead to these problems. So it's just it's an unfortunate thing, and it's a challenge when it's in your face and you see it. And I know, Ken, like you said, you've been areas where when you've seen it, especially in the contrast between high wealth and very much poor, very near each other, it stands out more. Much like you said with Vegas and stuff like that. But challenge is I've seen it in a lot of places around the world if you look for it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stats now for the UK, and it's quite interesting. I'm not going to compare percentages, but it's interesting to see the trends in the graphs, because I don't have the percentages to hand. But in England, it went down in 2010 and has kind of increased since then. So homelessness is not doing great in England in the past 10 years. In Scotland, it went down a little bit after 2010, quite massively in 2014, and then it's kind of stabilizing in 2018. Whereas in Wales, it's kind of a similar-ish graph, and same with Northern Ireland. Actually, Northern Ireland's been pretty much the same for the past 15 years. It seems to not be changing much.
Well, because in Northern Ireland, or the Northern Wales and those kind of areas, you just build your own hut or house and live in it anywhere. What?
Same with Scotland. That's why we don't have homelessness, because the streets are your home. So how can you be homeless? You live in the land, chasing your own haggis. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, people, for jumping in the chat. I'm trying to catch up with it myself. I've heard that China has a housing program called Prison that's very effective. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Like, there
honestly,
are countries out there that
the U.S. does too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the U.S. incarcerates more people than any other country in the world, and most other countries combined.
Yep. And that's probably partly why, right? I mean, if somebody's, to be honest, if I was struggling to eat and I was struggling to survive, yeah, I'd go and put my finger in my pocket and point it at somebody and be like, I have a gun, arrest me now.
Well, so some people do that. No, it's more just in general that we incarcerate at a higher rate here in the United States more than anything else versus actually doing anything to lessen the chance that people are going to commit crime or commit crime. We have, by comparison to most of the world, the U.S.'s handle on the penal system is, I would argue, almost criminal in itself.
Oh, absolutely. The part is privatized as well, so it's incentivized to incarcerate people. Madness, especially with the fact that marijuana is becoming legal in so many states now. And there's people still in jail, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people still in jail for dealing or for taking or for having.
Well, let's start with the users.
Teams dealing.
Right? Let's start with the people that have been penalized just because they use it, and that piece. But there's all kinds of issues. But it is unfortunate because it can put a bit of a stain on what you otherwise believe you're running into and seeing when you basically that's your impression of what you see in a city. It can take away from, because the challenge is like where I live here and what you saw of my area of town. I'm in the suburbs and it's nice and everything around me, and actually 4 miles around me it is quite nice. And so it is a bit hard, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's this segregation, the separation of the rich and the poor. Or I say rich, right? I mean, comparatively rich. I mean, like, I am considered rich compared to somebody who has nothing, right? Because debt is one thing, but, having nothing and wishing you had debt, is a different thing. So it's just tough, and we're not going to solve it today. So let's not delve into it any further. Even though I always get snagged on the thought, because it always does irk me so much seeing the homeless. It really does, and the poor, and it makes me feel guilty. I just feel so guilty every time I see them. I have something of a bleeding heart when it comes to seeing people in pain and suffering, which I guess is a good thing, but it doesn't do me any favors personally. I suppose it does these people favors when I do give.
It's good to be aware, and it's good to know what things you can do personally to help the overall situation and what things you can try to work towards to help everyone else. But at the same time, the challenge is I warn everyone to be aware of how it takes place so they don't overly simplify the situation in their mind about how cities or areas are dealing with things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oversimplification is a big problem because you ever seen one of my favorite I had a training course, how many years ago? 6 years ago. I had a training course with Hewlett Packard when I used to work with them. And the training course was in part to do with statistics. And it was actually a very good course. At least this part of it was very good. They said, okay, we're looking at this factory, and 99% of the injuries are 99.9% of the injuries are this one thing, and there's 0.1% which is something else. Where do you put your resources? And of course, everybody says, the 99.1%. And they said, okay, let's add some more context. It's a window making factory, so they work with glass a lot. The 99.9% are people who have cuts and scrapes or falls or whatever, and they have minor damage, and it's usually just a bandage, and the first aider deals with that. The 0.1% is somebody died, right? How do you deal with the problems now? And it's like, suddenly it's a perspective shift, right? Like, yeah, we should deal with them, and people getting cuts and scrapes should be reduced. Of course, that's important. But somebody died, right? And it's the same when you look at poverty. Even if we consider a place where there's a very few number of homeless, that doesn't even necessarily mean that it's better, right? That can also mean that the people who are homeless have it even worse, for all we know. I mean, there are places where you can be homeless, but you also get so much help from the government. You get blankets, you get temporary accommodation, so you're technically still homeless even though you live somewhere. You get opportunities for employment, you get health care, you get free medication, so on and so forth, right? You might get all this help, but if you have it somewhere else where there's a single person who dies from homelessness because they have no help, that's obviously worse than having 100 people who are helped a lot, right? So my point, as you said, oversimplification of these issues is a big issue in itself, and we should always be wary and keep our eyes open and not just trust the statistics that are fed to us as if they're the only thing that matter, because they are not. So the first thing I actually wanted to talk about today.
Well, it's funny because I was going to talk about like what else you had seen in Denver besides that aspect of it, from going into actually spending some time in downtown, so that, like I said, you didn't just have the perspective of, you know, my basement essentially for the weekend of Game Fest.
True. So yeah, we went around. We had some really awesome food, some interesting stuff. Had a couple drinks, some coffees here and there. You showed me what was the name of that store? The Hot Ones, Hot Shop. What's it called? The clothing store.
Oh, I introduced Ken, and this will be great for most people in the US who've likely already been before, to Hot Topic.
Hot Topic, sorry.
That's what you said. Hot Ones. I was like, you mean the hot sauce?
So uncultured. Yeah. I'm just like, Hot Ones? Is it the same as that sauce show? Like, I don't know. I don't know things, man.
No, took Ken to Hot Topic for his first time as we were walking around the 16th Street Mall and the outdoor pavilion that is the Denver Walking Mall downtown. And I love the Hot Topic that's down there. It's just one of the bigger stores. They always have the latest stuff in there. So I walked in just because it's kind of my sensibilities of the kind of things I enjoy. And Ken looked around like, what? What is this place? And saw quite a few things that looked interesting, that looked like things you would enjoy or that your wife would enjoy and things like that. And so we spent a little bit of time there.
There's so many interesting places for food as well, like such variety, so many breweries. I was like, Jesus Christ, every shop, every corner has a brewery. And I don't mean like a store, they mean like a brewery. Like they're making beer in there.
Yeah, everyone's own microbrews. Denver, Colorado as a whole really appreciates drinking, and we support it. And in doing so, I have yet to see the brewery that's come around that I've been here that's gone under. Like, every one of them continues to succeed, and they've all done well.
Well, that's the thing. If you have enough people who like beer and enough people try your beer, even if it's not the same, as long as it doesn't taste the same as everybody else's, and even if it does, you still may have a chance. But if it's something unique, you can, you'll have people who prefer that because that's how taste is. We all have our own preferences. Ken's going to get his goth on, says Hando, referring to the store, Hot Topic. Yeah, so we went in there. We got a couple of nerdy clothing for our friends and family and such. And I got Kitten a Dunder Mifflin hoodie, referring to that, which she likes. Thankfully, I managed to just stuff it into my bag. Like, oh my god, it's a good thing I was flying Spirit on the way there and not on the way back.
I was gonna say that'd have been rough.
They would have had an issue, yeah. But thankfully it was Delta, and they were like, "Do you need a hand with carrying that on?" I was like, "No, I'm okay." Whereas Spirit's like looking at you up and down, like seeing how much they can charge you for carrying a tiny little purse or something.
Yep.
Yeah. The flight back was fine, by the way. I had no problems.
Good to hear.
It was a little bumpy landing, but that was it. So it was fine. So yeah, that was Monday. We had a great time. We didn't actually play any games on Monday, did we?
No. Well, the thing is, right after Game Fest, one of the things that's funny is you think, oh, more opportunities to play, but you're kind of like, but we just did a lot. And
yeah, you kind of get like, my eyes are sore.
Well, because we spent that evening, it's kind of jokingly, even that after Game Fest was finished and most people had cleared out and all that we had consumed over the weekend, it was kind of like, I kind of like just something, more substantial for food. And so I took Ken to a local soup and salad place, Sweet Tomatoes, and we just both got heaping piles of salad to eat.
It was because I said to you, I was like, my body's crying for something green. Like, I don't usually feel that way. Like, I usually go weeks without eating, like, a salad, right? Like, I barely have a salad. Usually I'll have, I don't know. I'll make a pasta that has some salad in it. Like, I'll eat with tomatoes and maybe some spinach leaves. But I don't exclusively eat, like, vegetables. Like, I don't do that very often. But, yeah, after Game Fest where it was all just, oh, my God, I ate so many M&Ms, cheese sauce and Doritos. I just ate all that nonstop. And that's and pizza. That's what we survived on. And, yeah, by Sunday night, we were both just like, man. Our bodies are crying. All we've had is hot sauce to eat and survive on. We need something of substance, something substantial, something with nutritional value. So we went to, what was the place called again? Sorry,
it was called Sweet Tomatoes.
Sweet Tomatoes, yeah. So yeah, we went there, and you bumped into a couple of friends of yours there as well. And yeah, we just piled these plates full of salad, and man, we were just like, oh my God, I feel human again. Like I feel like a normal human being.
It did
not
help.
like a walking sack of grease.
No, it did help significantly, which was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and then, like I said, took you downtown. It was a bit windy and cold out on Monday, but we were able to show you things. And unfortunately, it's like, as we were running around, your flight got bumped up, of all things, to be leaving earlier, which was surprising. So we had to cut short a little bit from the hanging out downtown to take you back. But, hopefully at least gave you a taste of what Denver has to offer. And probably for the best that I didn't try to force the issue and take you up to the mountains or something. Monday,
right,
we would have been
rushing right back. Woo,
that would have been rough. So, yeah. But it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out very well. And the one last thing I'd like to mention as well was on Sunday night we after we got back from dinner, we just sat down on the couch and relaxed, and for like 2 hours we just sat and talked about books. And it was great. We just talked about, our different authors that we enjoy, the style of writing, how to write. How to design a book if you're writing it, and then we both confess that we also have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely!
But it's interesting to talk about.
Some of that came from like
gender and gender in books as well.
Well, so it's talking a little bit how you would write certain things and from our own perspectives versus others, because I was talking about how I had been beta reading John Wasik's new book, and how I had developed my opinions of certain aspects of what he's writing and what he was telling me in this book that I was getting ready to meet with him and actually talk about. And so it kind of came up with Ken and I discussing a little bit of what our thoughts on what compels us in storytelling, especially when it comes to reading books. Just so I could kind of clarify some of my own thoughts when I passed them on to John to make sure, I had gotten other perspective on it. And so in doing so, we'd actually analyze a little bit of what do we like in writing? What do we like in authors? What are the things that are good, bad, and ugly or keeps us into certain series and such?
And I raised the point that I am really bad when I'm writing, that I'm not very good at first person. I'm very much a third person kind of writer in any... It's because it's more factual. It's more... And if I need to write what somebody else is thinking, I'm like, I don't know. Like, my emotional capabilities or instincts are minimal at best, right? If any. I'm nearly, like, psychopathic when it comes to I'm really, really bad with empathy. I try to be as kind of person as I can, but I really don't have a natural feeling for these kind of things. So I actively make an effort to try and be a better person and think of what other people would feel, but I'm so bad at it. So, if I'm writing a story and I'm like, what would this person be feeling this time? I don't know. So instead I just write what's happening. And maybe I'll write what they do to explain their feelings rather than
through action versus internal feelings or thoughts. And
yeah, because I know if I was betrayed by somebody, I would see it as an illogical and inconvenient thing for our friendship or relationship, which is not the way most people would be hurt, and but I wouldn't know how to describe that, man. I'd just be like, this is an inefficient relationship in my life. I will end this now. Like that's I don't know. I'm just not very good at handling the emotional side.
But that was part of the discussion, because we were trying to talk about how the things we would like to see from certain authors or certain stories, and how you'll sometimes get one perspective, right, that may come from a certain aspect. And it's kind of, in a way, it reminds me of literature class and stuff like this back in the day, where my teachers used to want me to understand the time frame that a book was written on, like from the historical perspective and what was going on politically and things like that. And in doing so, to better understand why it was written the way it was. And for me, I've always been very much just a fan of books. And so it was just kind of like, I thought it was a shite book as it didn't entertain me. Or it would be like, I don't know what they were thinking. I just thought it was fun. Kind of very simple. But now, as we were talking a little more depth about specific authors and what we liked and didn't like about some of the storytelling and characters, we were actually getting into a little bit of like, I don't think I could accurately write, or personally right now, do a very good job writing a female's perspective in any book I wrote. I don't think I could. And I equally talked about how some of the books I'd read recently were written by people that when they talked about a situation from especially a military perspective or something like that, I could tell almost instantly about people who had never been in the military. And we're talking about it as though they just observed in their opinions of what it must be like if they think about it. And I'm just looking at them like, no, you've never been. You don't understand the nuances, and I can tell it just from how you wrote this character or how they interacted.
And when we talked about, we also talked about the differences in, we talked about gender mostly, but it can also be applied to race or religion or culture as well. But writing in the perspective of somebody else who's gone through things that you haven't, right? So that's why when you talk about race a lot and inequality, and people talk about like the hood and people who grew up in the hood and it being a completely different experience, and you can't really, you don't know what it's like you literally don't. So when you're trying to debate somebody on some sort of racial, cultural issue, and you reference somebody's upbringing, they have an advantage if they've lived that lifehood because they can actually describe it in a way that you can never understand. Whereas if I tried to write something that was like about the Bronx, right, and people growing up there, I couldn't do it. I have no perspective to do that. And I say they have an advantage. Obviously, that's a massive disadvantage growing up in squalor and such. But you get my point, though. And it's the same with gender. If I tried to write a female perspective as opposed to a male perspective, I don't know if I could do it, right? Like I don't think I would have. I don't think I can. It's not that women and men are so completely different that they're some alien species or anything, but it would be. And I think on the face it would seem fine. But I think, even if I get 95% right, that last 5% is going to be weird because they'll be like, "Why are you thinking in that way? That's not how society has either taught women to think, or women biologically don't think that way." Right? Either which way, I think it's still valid, whichever way it is. And so we had this interesting discussion about how you have to. One of the main the aspects of being a good author is being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes from a different experience and environment. And if you can't do it, you really need to sit down with people and talk to them and gain their perspectives and emulate their mindset and learn that mindset. And that's why writing is so difficult, because you need to start thinking from other people's point of view. And that is one of the hardest things that we can do as empathetic humans. So that was a really interesting discussion we had. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I thought it was good fun.
Oh, we did. We spent a good part of the night talking about it, and kind of going back and forth.
So I want to give I actually want to do this ahead of the show, but we're already half an hour in because I'm an idiot. I want to give a big shout out to my parents because it is their 40th wedding anniversary today.
Hey, congratulations.
So a big shout out to them. 40 years, man. That's crazy. I remember when 15 years ago they went to Egypt. They went down the Nile on a cruise for their 25th wedding anniversary. And I remember that as being recent. Like that was just a year or two ago.
Look at Ken. Look at Ken getting old and realizing how time slips by, and you start going like, "Oh crud! The thing that I thought happened, last year happened 10 years ago." Oops.
Yeah, but then they reminded me that was like, Ken, you were like in high school at the time. Like that wasn't just a year or two ago. That was a long time ago. And it was actually kind of a funny story because I remember at one point I called them, not a video call, because I don't think that was really a thing at that point, really. I mean, Skype was just picking up. And they were like, "Why are you not at school?" And I was like, "It's a snow day." They're like, "It's not a snow day." I'm like, "You're in Egypt. Of course it's not a snow day there."
Oh, that's funny.
It's blisteringly hot there. Of course it's not a snow day. So yeah, happy 40th wedding anniversary. They're in a hotel tonight enjoying some well-deserved time off. So you remember that old house that I well, did you ever visit it? I don't think
I was saying, which one? Because everything you showed me was old as balls.
Yes. This is the house that I lived in during my undergraduate. So during the show, for the first few years of the show, I streamed from there.
Was this the one in Sterling?
Yes.
And
yes.
I think I don't know if you showed me it specifically, but I think we went by and you kind of pointed out like I used to live there.
Probably, yeah. Well, I streamed from there I lived there on 3 separate occasions. Once during my undergraduate, once after my undergraduate, and once before moving here. We moved back in between those times. So I lived there 3 separate times, and I streamed most of the show from that house. So over the years, it's been mostly our house, like me and Kittens. Even though my parents own it, but it's been me and Kittens' home for a long time. Even though we moved back and forth a few times. And this past week, it's been kind of crazy because I've been getting video messages and pictures from my buddy Graham, because he's moving in there just now.
Oh, wow.
And yesterday he moved in fully, him and his fiance. And so they sent us a video message of the house, and it was just so weird seeing like what was our home now is somebody else's home. And I'm so glad I went to somebody that the people that we love, right?
That's actually really cool.
It means that, not only is it staying like within people that we care about. I mean, my parents still own it, obviously, but it's being rented to my friends, and that's nice because I know they're going to take good care of it, and it's good for them to be like their first marital home once they get married in a year's time. So that was weird as well. So this week has been quite big for my parents because they finished like painting and getting the house ready for new renters. Then they have their 40th wedding anniversary today, and they're actually having a weekend where they're not painting and they're not, cleaning up our old
they can
house.
Just enjoy.
Yeah, they can actually relax, which is great. Okay, the last thing I wanted to bring up for dysfunctional deviations is a dumb thing. It's pretty dumb.
Okay.
And it's a learning point for me because I guess this comes back to the human empathy thing. So I was in a store about 2 weeks ago, and I only just remember this before the show. But I was in a store 2 weeks ago, and Kit and I were buying a bottle of booze or something. I think a bottle of wine or something. And actually, no, it was vodka. I remember because of the circumstance. So I looked at the prices, and I saw that if you get the bigger bottle, it was okay. Just for simplicity's sake, the bigger bottle was, let's just say, $20.
Okay.
Or you could get two smaller bottles, which made the same volume of alcohol, for $22.
Okay.
Effectively, right? Either that or it was $20, but you get less volume, right? The point being, it was definitely not worthwhile getting the smaller bottles.
Yes. The incentive to get the bigger bottle.
Right, exactly. So I said to Kitten, like, look, we could get two different flavors if you'd like, or we can go for the bigger and whatever. And the guy behind the register was saying to us, "Oh, if you go for the two smaller, you actually save money." And I was like, "How so? Is there a deal on?" And he went, "Oh, it's just cheaper."
Oh no!
I was like, admittedly, the prices weren't as easy as like $20.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
$17.89 plus tax or something, right?
Yeah.
So you need to think of it in that manner. But I looked at it and I was like, no, I can do that mental maths in my head. I can definitely see this. I'm saving money if I do the opposite of what you say. And I was like, can you explain? And Ken was like, just leave it. Look, just leave it. Just don't press the issue. You're being like overly. You're being rude, Ken. And I was like, I'm being rude. I was just trying to get clarification. She's like, no, you pressed it 3 times. This poor guy is looking awkward. And I realized that, yeah, he's just probably some student who's just like, I'm just trying to make a sale here, man, And I'm like pushing his buttons. So it was an interesting learning experience for me because I don't like when somebody lies to me, right? He wasn't doing it intentionally, I don't think.
Well, that's a challenge, right? Because it's either he wasn't able to or hadn't done the math correctly in his head, and therefore thought he was correct and saying the right thing, or
which means that I was embarrassing him, right?
Or he was actively misleading you in an effort to accomplish something when it came to his sales. Those are kind of what your basic scenario, I believe, looking at it, would have been.
Yeah. So either which way, me calling him out was either embarrassing him or calling him out for being an unscrupulous seller, right? And either which way, I'm going to make him feel bad by continuing down that path. Now, considering I already knew which one was the cheaper one, because I can do basic maths, right? I can see which one was cheaper. Did I need to follow down the path of telling this guy he was wrong, is kind of my point here. Because there was nothing to be gained, right? All I was doing was making another human being feel bad when the main goal was really just to get out of there with the cheaper.
I would argue, Ken, actually, someone on behalf of your initial pointing out the his misquote or the incorrectness of a statement. The reason I say, and I've done this in the past with others, is pointing out what is an obvious untruth or something that's just maybe, again, his mistake, miscalculation. But pointing it out, as long as you don't belabor the point, initially is more to save the next customer coming in, so that the person is now aware, can correct themselves so they don't mislead someone else. I ran into that at a point fairly recently where someone was trying to talk solar power to me and how it's handled in Colorado. And me being an owner now and kind of watching how my bills come and go and stuff like that, realizing that I am not getting, and maybe I need to check in for my own purposes, equitable payback on the amount of overcharge I build. Like when I generate more energy than I use, I'm barely getting paid anything back for that or credited. And they're like, oh no, but they credit you like 1-to-1. And so you don't need to get a power wall or anything like that. I was like, I'm pretty sure they don't. because I'm not seeing it on my bill. And the guy was like, oh, because I've been selling everybody on that as a bonus, because that's how I understood it. I was like, well, I don't believe I've seen that in my own bill, so I would recommend.
So that would make him
double check it
by ignorance.
By ignorance, and that's the thing though. But he took that and said, well, I am going to double check.
Good.
Because of that, because he didn't want to be incorrect and didn't want to be mis-selling anything. So he was like, ooh, let me double check that. I was like, there you go. And so in a situation like this, where if he's trying to lead someone down a path based on how they're going to spend their money, based on his thought on it, if he's doing it out of ignorance and you correct him, and he's like, oh, my bad, I didn't realize that, you've now helped the future customer. Now, the other side of that is if you inform him and he doesn't acknowledge the correct aspect of what you've said, like if he actively, willfully says, no, what you're saying isn't true, that's when I start to get snarky or start to become a bit of an ass.
So, yeah, that's kind of where I was going towards, because he did deny me twice beforehand, right? And I was like, you're wrong. Like,
yeah, right. It's just like you're
right?
objectively wrong.
There must be some discount that I'm not aware of. Like, can you explain it to me, right?
Yeah.
I was like,
is it buy two get $1 off? Is it like, you know?
That's where I was getting called on, right? Because I kept saying, "Can you explain it to me?" I was putting him on the spot, and the truth is, there was customers behind us. They were lining up. He was just some guy who like just turned 21.
At that point, it gets a little bit.
He doesn't care. Right, and I'm just like, and Ken was like, "You need to drop it. You're being rude." And I was like, "Okay, you've got a point. I am being rude because there's a bunch of people waiting here. And why does my need to be right overwhelm
Trump like everyone else's? Yeah. Which
so
I can understand, but at the same time, like I said, it's all dependent upon both yours, but his intent, right? What was he trying to accomplish?
I found myself fantasizing about writing a letter to the owner and being like, "Dear sir, I would like to inform you of some basic facts."
That would be, I would say, taking a bit far, unless it was someone actively misinforming people on a regular, on a big way. Then
this is how percentages work.
Then you're being a bit of a douche. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was being a bit of a douche, but it was just silly, and I really wanted to call. It's I don't know if you don't go on Reddit that much, but there's this great subreddit called "Am I the a-hole? Am I the asshole?" And it's just people doing things like that, like, was I in the right or wrong in this situation? And people will either say NTA for not the asshole, YTA for you're the asshole, ESH for everyone sucks here, or NAH, no assholes here, right? So it can go any of the directions, and it is super interesting because some of the posts there are like things like that where it's kind of either clear cut or it doesn't really matter, and it's kind of, you know. But then there's people who are like, I cheated on my wife and she cheated on me 3 times before that, but it turned out like I gave her an STD 10 years ago, and it's just this whole convoluted thing, and most people just comment saying, everyone sucks here and go see counselors. Like, you need therapy.
This has gone so far off the rails that there is no good answer.
And quite a lot of people are also saying, like, go to legal advice, go talk to them instead. It's more appropriate there.
Well, yeah, there's the point
where you law.
Oh gosh, yeah, when people bring things up in an open forum, and it's like, no, that's not where this belongs. You actually need to get this solved.
Michael Bricks in the chat says, you're getting more 2 bottles versus 1. Whether they're smaller doesn't make a difference.
You're really just paying for the extra glass there. I mean, come on.
And Hando says 2 + 2 = 3 today only.
Oh gosh. Right? Yeah.
So it's funny. Okay, so that was what I wanted to talk about, sir. That's what I've been up to.
Okay, gotcha. Else, really. No worries. All good. All good. Well, let's see. For my side of things then, to briefly go through. Wanted to start off by talking about our friend El Campo. As this Game Fest had come up, a lot of people celebrating birthdays, and he decided to do something special for his that I got a momentary piece of to help him. I
saw this.
And what he did, for those who aren't aware, is he decided he was going to use this opportunity on his birthday to prank his wife. And so what he did...
I didn't realize it was a prank. This is news to me. Okay.
Yeah, no. He went... And I don't know how long ago he actually set this up. But he picked me up after a work function and such, or before one, and took us down to pick up a slightly used, I think 2014 it was, Nissan GTR. and to bring it back so I could drive with him to bring it back to his house. And the whole thing about this and why it was a prank is that he, for quite some time, has been looking to at some point own one of these cars. It's one of his top things he would desire. Us being car guys, he's been following it since the GTR came to the States as the R35, one of his favorite cars. So what he did is, well, in the time that he's been coveting this for some time, due to regular life issues and having to prioritize where your resources go.
Of course.
Essentially, his wife said, no. You are not going to purchase this frivolous sports car. We don't need it. You've got your, he's got an older STI now, not that much older, but older STI Subaru that's quite a nice, fun, fast car that he can drive every day and has for years now. And so it was kind of like, you don't need a GTR. Hasn't stopped him from looking for them all the time. I don't know if you ever if you ever saw his computer while he was gaming at Game Fest, but every one of his backdrops is a picture of a GTR. If you go into his basement, he's got like model ones around the house because those are the only thing his wife has allowed him to purchase that are GTR related. And so what he did is he picked up the car, drove it home, and parked it in front of his garage, and then he put a Facebook post out there saying, "Happy birthday to me," or "Happy birthday. I have been wanting to see one of these parked in my driveway for years now." And posted that on social media. At which point, he did not realize, because he was thinking it'd give him a few minutes, one of his wife's coworkers or someone she knew was in the hospital pregnant. And so she was sitting at home because she's been recovering from surgery she's had. She had some jaw surgery. Refreshing Facebook constantly because she was waiting to hear the announcement of a newborn. And so he posted it, and not 30 seconds later, I think 20 seconds later, he said on his post, he got all capital letters posted from his wife, WTF. And he was just like, oh, snap, because he then expected her to come rushing out of the house looking for murder. She had threatened in the past that if he ever just went out and bought one, it might negatively impact their marriage status. And so he knew what he was doing.
He's got some, I would say he's got some cojones.
Oh my goodness, Ken, you have no idea.
He's got death wish, I think is more accurate.
You only have had a momentary interaction with Campo in person. I will say this was true to form. We were not overly surprised when he recommended or said he was going to do this. But he did essentially get the reaction he had hoped for. Although what he did have is that she came to the window of the house looking outside to kind of confirm, like, is that in my driveway? And he very quickly went into the house and let her know that he had just rented it for the day versus actually buying it. Because I'm pretty sure he didn't want to give her time to find any of his guns. And so...
America.
But at the same time, it was entertaining, and I got to see her yesterday when I went back and picked up the GoPros I had lent him to try to capture the interaction. I haven't looked through them yet to see what he got because he said he didn't get to use them as much as he'd hoped. But I am curious to see if there's anything of her coming to the window or anything. Because as he got the post, he was like, "Oh snap!" trying to turn them on real quick, and she was already like at the window. He's like, "Oh no!" But it was a good prank, and I was happy to be able to help him in it. And it was nice because I drove back with him after he picked it up, and it is a nice vehicle, very nice. Car service, I forget what it's called, starts with a T, Truvo or something like that lets you rent other people's personal cars, that they put them up for whatever price they think is willing. And so he paid someone for access to their car for 24 hours and got to rent and play with it and had a good time with it. And so yeah, good times, fun. Man, that was a nice car. Definitely pulls well, has all the power you could ever want. Felt amazing. So,
Raft says glorious in response to this story.
It was a good time. It really was. So shout out to Campo for being who he is and letting me at least participate and check it out. In addition, I didn't have a lot for non-geek this week, but the big one for anyone who was following my social media posts is that I went skiing yesterday. I went up only my second time this season, which is terrible, because I've paid for a season pass. And in order for it to be worth its money, how much I spent, I need to go up at least like 3 or 4 more times, at least. or to continuously go at least to the slope I was just at 2 or 3 more times, because I had the opportunity to go to Vail. And Vail, Colorado is one of the, in my opinion, best places you can possibly ski, period. It is just a gorgeous slope. When people ask what is the difference between Vail and every other slope in Colorado, I basically share that Vail is those slopes, but with a much thicker base of snow, and they've cleared out so many of the trees around that you have all these areas to go to that are just entire bowls or domes of snow with not a tree in sight. And so you can kind of pick and choose where you want to go down the mountain. It's ridiculous. It's almost unnerving. And I got some sense, the group I was with, or the couple I was with, the gentleman was saying that he can see sometimes vertigo from just like an edge of snow going off where you don't see anything below it. You're like, is this a cliff? I don't know. And until you get up to it, you realize it's just more snow going down.
I saw a popular Reddit post this week that's a repost a million times, but this guy's skiing and he goes flying down this slope and it's completely empty. The snow looks crisp and beautiful, nice day. And at one point you see him just facing down and everything looks fine. You see the camera turn because he looks behind him to see if there's anything behind him, looks forward, and he's now falling into a road because it turns out there's an overpass where the snow went down onto the overpass.
Oh no!
He was just he landed, broke both legs. Yeah, it was her. Yeah, and he was lucky to only break legs. It was a big fall.
Oh my!
But you just see him start going, like, what do I do?
Yeah, at this point I am just falling, and this sucks.
It looked like there was no warning poles. I watched it a couple times the second before. I didn't see anything to designate, don't go this direction, you will die.
That sounds insane.
So I'm guessing that's probably a country where there's safety is like a secondary thing.
Well, that or it's somewhere where someone just went off the normal paths and decided they're going to cut across country and stuff, because I know a lot of that happens too. People are like, there is a pole here that says don't go, but look, there's lots of snow. It's fine.
Yeah.
And people go off course anyways. But anyhow, so yeah, I went skiing there. Vail has some of the best slopes you could hope for. But it's crazy because we went on a Saturday. And the group I was with, they go because that's day off, right? But so is that for everyone else in Colorado. And so normally just getting up on the mountain takes hours. And then getting off the mountain takes hours. And while you're skiing, there's lines everywhere. The couple I'd with had just been to Vail, I think, a week prior. And they said they were sitting in some of these lines where they're just, this is dumb, right? I'm spending so much time in line that I'm barely on the slope. And so it's not necessarily worth the drive up and the money spent for parking and all those kind of things. Well, in this case, we were really surprised because we got there. We left the parking lot at the foothill of the mountains at about 6:10 in the morning. Took us about 2 hours-ish to get up to Vail, which is not bad. A little bit of traffic partway up, but then it cleared out as soon as we hit the main tunnel going through Eisenhower Tunnel. It cleared out and there was no real traffic after that. Got out, parked, walked through the village, got to the lift, and there was a line, and we were late. But admittedly, the line was there because they hadn't opened up the gondola yet. Okay. We were in that first press of people when they first say, okay, the lifts are open, the slopes are open. So once we did go and people started going up, it took us maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes in line to get onto a gondola and start heading up. So it really was nothing. But then we spent most of the time skiing on the back bowls, so getting over the mountain, going down a few trails up to another peak, and then spending our time on the backside of the mountains. And we didn't hit another line on a lift almost the rest of the day. I think at most we would hit a line and have to wait maybe a minute, if not two, to get onto the lift at most. But most of the time we skied right up and it was maybe 30 seconds to a minute. So it was just beautiful. And Vail has such a large amount of slopes on it, so much open, just terrain. We looked around and there were so many times where we would see maybe 3 or 4 other people on the slope with us. And looking back and seeing almost nothing behind us. And they were both marveling at just how empty the slopes were. And
on a Saturday as well. That's crazy, yeah.
And it was basically 45 degrees out or so, 45 degrees out. Sunny blue skies, just gorgeous, gorgeous day of skiing. And so really loved it. We were able to hit some of these slopes as the very first, if not first or second people down. I got to experience for my first time ever corduroy groomed ski slope, where the snow was still at that groom point where I had the little points of corduroy.
Oh, right. Yeah,
where it was so freshly groomed, we were cutting the first paths down.
Dude, I love that kind of snow. Yeah, I've seen that a few times.
I've never done that.
It feels good.
I've never done that because most of the slopes I go to, they're just trying to get rid of the moguls. and so they don't necessarily clean it all the way down to the point where it's just beautifully groomed, or I don't get down that slope until it's already been masked by a bunch of people. So I got to go down, and it was funny because I shared my Slopes app recording of my trip on social media, and one of the things that came up was, I think I did, actually maybe I can find it, share it if I have it, but how many runs I did, which I think it marked 16 runs for the day, although it might have been one of them might have caught that wasn't really a run, more just traversing. But it also showed like how many vertical feet, which was somewhere I think around 19,000 feet, I think, downhill. Yeah, here it is. See if I can share this. Oh, there it is. Although it looks like somehow I turned off your camera. I think I ran into this last time we were doing this. I was like, how did I turn off Ken's camera? That's all right, I'll turn it right back. But you can see here that the big stats from it is basically 16 runs and little maps all over where it was on the mountain. A total of 26.8 miles of length in doing this. And we got, let's see, what was it? My big one was that I did at that, and I think it was that one groomed run, but you could just kind of see on the corner here, 49.7 miles per hour as I was careening down the mountain.
Well, dude, if it's been freshly set, then it's going to be perfect for skiing. And with nobody else there...
Yep. And so I hit it.
Real power, real speed with that.
I hit it in such a way that it was just flying down the mountain without any anything to bump on. Even it was just open, just beautifully clean, open snow. So nice, and it was a beautiful day out. I'll show one more shot, and this is on social media, of just the image of the mountain behind, where as I scroll through showing some of the slopes and the peaks in the background, and like the one or two people even in the frame right here, I think 4 people that I can see on the entire mountain as I'm looking across to other slopes and such. Oh nope, there's two more people. And so just this massive open hill to go down skiing. And so it was truly gorgeous out. It was a beautiful day. So big shout out to my friends who I went out with. It was gorgeous. And just couldn't have asked for a better ski day. Really couldn't. Come to find out at the end of the day why it was so empty is because there was a ski competition going on the front side of the mountain, or a snowboard one from Burton, where they were hitting the massive super pipe as well as these huge jumps they had set up. And so when we came off the mountain, I was able to see these crowds sitting around watching the action go on. And so we stopped and kind of looked at like, oh, that's where all the people we would normally have to be fighting for time on the slopes are hanging out. Because the only people
to go witness it already probably enjoy skiing, right? So that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so we had missed it. I think the gentleman I was with did see it as we walked in and said like US Open or something, Burton and such, as we walked into the village that day, but we totally missed it. And so it was like, well, we'll just have to remember for next time that if we want to go skiing in these areas, wait until there's a competition happening, because then it's a beautiful day, even on a Saturday. And so it was epic day skiing. I wouldn't be surprised if you could see like, sunburn on my cheeks or something like that from just extra snow exposure. Since I didn't put anything on, I just had goggles and go, and such. So it was amazing. So anyhow, that's what I did yesterday. That was so good. And yes, as Mike asked, were my legs jello afterwards? Yes, they were, and they still hurt today. Like I am in pain today with how my legs feel. Oh, it's so bad.
I always jokingly say that I love skiing because it's the only extreme sport that involves falling at a steady pace.
Yeah.
It's the laziest sport of all time. But no, you actually, to keep yourself balanced and so on, and to keep up speed, it does actually cost a lot of energy.
Well, and
you do feel it.
One of the things that I had to remind the people I was skiing with is where I ski on blades and they ski on full-length skis. And they're like, oh, they're just short skis. It's like, yes, but the difference is, full-size skis that are massive length can absorb a lot of the impact and bumps by just kind of the ski themselves having a little bit of flex. My blades are less than 3 feet long, less than a meter long. And so there's not a whole lot of flex in that. It's pretty much my legs. And so if you see me going down the same mountain and the same slope as someone with skis, you'll see my legs just constantly doing little shock absorbers. And so they were just on fire by the time we ended the runs.
Just keep your knees bent. Don't stand up straight, Wayne.
Well, but that's the thing. I have to. Like, even when I'm resting, I have to, like, have a slight bend in the knees, or else every bump is just ridiculous and I'd actually probably fall. Because if you're straight up and down without flexing your knees on blades, when you take that in impact, it will likely throw you off balance and catch an edge and then boom, right? And so it's just like, woo, that was a thing. Now, I have to feel good about it, right? Because I'm, that was good exercise, me out for a day, enjoying what the Colorado Rockies provide us, and just having a great time. And so, yes, exactly, Bricks, BYFK, I know exactly what that means. And for Bricks' perspective, I spent a lot of the time resting in Shizen no Kamae with properly bent legs to minimize the pain, and it's still, my legs are smoked. It's like working water for an entire day. So yes, he understands. But that was a good time. It was a blast. The other thing I wanted to bring up before we take a break, and that reminds me I need to probably pick a song for a break.
I do have one more thing to jump on, so I can give you time for that.
Okay, cool. Is that thank you to Michael Burkett, to Unit Zero, for letting me know, although Netflix also let me know. And so it's just a matter of like, haha, I must appreciate this and do this as well. Is that the second season of Formula One Drive to Survive is now available on Netflix. And this is the series that I gushed about last year when it came out, about the F1 season and F1 racing. And so the one previously was from the 2018 year. This one covers the 2019 year. And I have just absolutely loved it. I'm only, I think, 3 episodes in. I had to stop myself last night where I was just going to binge it all the way through again because it's gorgeous. It's in their little Dolby Vision 4K, beautiful cinematography. And I give credit because there's at least one scene where 2 of the drivers are walking down and getting filmed, and they basically said, man, Netflix is a bunch of, and used an off-color term, and afterwards kind of chuckles like, see, they're not going to air this. And then sure enough, they put that in as one of the intros to one of the episodes. Like, Netflix is like, haha, we don't care, we'll show it. Because it's so good, and because Netflix is essentially getting behind-the-scenes access to all the teams and drivers throughout the F1 season. And man, if they don't put together such a compelling story. And so I throw it out there. If you at all like cars and racing, even a little bit, I highly recommend checking it out. But Formula One, Drive to Survive, Season 2's out, and gosh, I can't wait to get in there and finish watching the season. It looks so good. Anyhow, Ken, what did you have to finish this out as I choose a song here for us to go into the break?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about coronavirus because that's obviously such a big thing.
You start us out at like poverty, we get into some like chill, and you bring us back to like flu-like death. So, all right, Ken, give us your corona update.
Well, I just wanted to say that this week's been really interesting with the first British and the first US death. They suddenly become, for most of our listeners, it's become a real thing suddenly. I was talking to some people this week, and I was watching Reddit as well, and they informed me of something that I actually noticed, I didn't actually. I saw a symptom of without realizing, not of the virus itself, but of the social impact.
What?
I do not have coronavirus yet. But I was at Costco yesterday, actually, and I was like, wow, it's really busy. This is weird. Like, I've been at Costco the weekend before, and it's kind of busy, but they had like 7 cashiers on, and they were all the lines were just like packed into the aisles. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I didn't really think much of it. I just thought, oh, well, it's a Saturday. Maybe that's just the way it is. The sun is coming out. Maybe they're just getting a bunch of beer for the weekend or something. Nope. Reddit informed me that they've seen Costco across the US has been seeing large number of people stocking up in tins, on fuel, on milk, bread, all the essentials, booze.
Right, all the essentials.
And it's the coronavirus panic has begun. People are now saying, uh-oh, we might need to go into quarantine. Let's get enough food to last. Thankfully, we actually just got paid, so we were like, hey, let's just go out and spend way too much at Costco so that the next 6 months we don't need to buy anything.
Well, so here's the thing, right? There's 2 sides of it where one comment has been, unfortunately, it takes money to save money in many cases, but if you have enough money to buy things when they're on the best special they can, you can buy something, especially something that will last for months to years on end, and buy the amount you would normally purchase over several years at once when it says best sale. Thus, you're actually saving a lot of money in the long run. And the challenge is
one argument is that you might end up using more if you have more of it in your house. For example, we got this big 2-liter bottle of spiced rum for like $22, which looks amazing, and I'm like, man, I want to dig into that. No, that's how it doesn't last for months.
No, it's when you buy things like toilet paper and paper towels, things that you use at a normal consumption amount, that you make it up for. Not when you buy yourself a lovely bottle of, booze that you can then consume at length because you're like, well, it's there. That's different.
Because otherwise you'll end up doing silly things like buying yourself sangria, which you never buy anyway, But who would be that dumb as to be bought into that a capitalist
to treat yourself to a lovely beverage because you were able to? Regardless so yes, Corona has definitely hit our shores. In fact, there's multiple cases in the U.S. that have been brought in as U.S. has been bringing its people back from infected areas. There's been one confirmed death, and there's been an example of one that was Corona, where they don't know where it was picked up from. They can't trace where it got it. In the U.S.
is concerning because it means it will have been spread further.
Well, when you look at where people have come and how it's gone, the chances that Corona has hit most of the world is pretty significant. And there's questions about whether everything has been properly reported out of the countries where the origin was in China and stuff like that. There's a lot of reasons to be aware. The real takeaway for people who are worried about the coronavirus is to treat it as though the flu season is rampant, and therefore to wash your hands, to make sure people who do get sick, to minimize your exposure to others. Sanitizers are good, that the mask is only good for people who are already sick as to whether they're going to randomly blow out germs and stuff like that. It doesn't really help you in intake in any way. And if you do
just wash your hands, wash your door handles occasionally. Don't touch people that you don't know. Don't touch things that they touch. And companies out there that are importing from countries that are infected, which is most countries now, but especially China or Italy right now as well is the other big one. You need to be careful and probably use gloves with your goods that you handle, because it's been proven.
Have they proven? Yeah. I didn't think they had shown that it was actually carrying over anything imported.
It is.
Due to the incubation. I thought that was still rumor as to whether it could become reactive or not.
No, they think it's happened in several places now because they can't see any other connection other than the fact that it's been imported by Chinese goods.
Okay, but it is things to be aware of. There is a piece where people talk about the real numbers and concern that the coronavirus has, what is it, a 2.1 or 2.9, I forget which 1% fatality rate from reported infections versus the flu, which is like a 0.01 or whatever percentage, which is why it is concerning, because it is 20 times more deadly essentially than the flu, although it isn't as prevalent as the flu. So there's kind of a balance back and forth there, things like that. I'm still running on the level of not the fear-mongering of it. I'd like to believe that in general, if you are healthy and do basic things, even if you do catch the virus, there's likelihood you will get through it okay. It is most likely going to target the people who are already have weak immune systems and such, be it young,
AIDS
old,
and elderly,
infirm, things like that. So stuff like that. The bigger question and consideration is how companies are addressing this, because we have a lot of the things that are being produced in China are now turning into where they aren't the effect of how many people are in their factories producing things means there's limited output from China right now. And in doing so, there's been significant output and change in a lot of our companies. We've seen already where a lot of electronics companies and things have delayed or said that their earnings this year are going to be affected by it. Specifically, they've talked about things like DRAM prices. I actually saw one just recently, shortages of RAM and stuff coming out, and so you might see an increase in RAM prices. Seeing things where like the latest Intel chips and some of those things coming out may be delayed to some degree. And in general, just how the markets are kind of interacting with that. Other things is like GDC, the Game Developers Conference, has been canceled or postponed at this point due to coronavirus, because admittedly a lot of the people who would be attending would be from Asian countries. And what were some of the other direct impacts for us as gamers and such? But a lot of it is just potential delays in some of the technology we're seeing and stuff that comes out of China. And Tails, you can see how many things are produced in China. Stuff like that. Mike Bricks is bringing up that transocean shipping has been hit pretty hard. But that's essentially right. People are very concerned with things coming in from infected countries. I hope it doesn't hit a global pandemic. Of course, we would rather not see.
It is. I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything. But this is the number of vectors for spreading this, and if you look at any like statistical propagation of disease,
the
like
models
this in
of
the
how
past,
diseases would go, yeah.
it will spread amongst the population. The best thing you can do is keep yourself clean, clean your hands. Make sure if you have employees or friends, have them do the same. Have Purell or any other hand sanitizer available, and yeah, just keep an eye out for this kind of thing. When it does start reaching your area, a self-quarantine isn't a terrible idea if it's directly in your area. And I just checked, actually. The live update from 10 minutes ago is there are 2 more cases that have been reported in Washington State, and the first in the Dominican Republic. There's also one in Rhode Island now. And there's 328 people currently quarantined in Michigan because one person was infected and was in contact with the 328 people, so they were all quarantined. But we think that they've been starting to come back negative, those tests already, so it's looking good.
Yeah.
But it's coming. Like it's already in the country.
Well, no, it's around. The whole point is be smart and don't go nuts over it. There's been negative impacts where people have thought that just because someone was coughing, they were infected by it and we're treating them poorly because of it. Now, it's still winter, it's still flu season, still things like that happening. Yeah. But be smart, be aware. Yes, there's been a lot of congregation in places that have been affected by it. What was the other thing I have like very off-color jokes to make about it that I won't today. But in general, just be smart, be clean. That's probably the best recommendations. Yeah, and the one thing I was going to say, we are in an age of technology. If you do get sick and you do need to stay home and even if it's self-quarantine, right? Something like that where you just have to not go to work, not do public. You know what's lovely? You can get things delivered to your door, like food and supplies. You can get 2-hour delivery via Amazon Prime for food. And so let them leave it on the doorstep if you're infected. And don't go shake their hands or give them tips, but say, leave it on the door, I've got corona, and you can still eat and not even have to leave your house and get through it.
My tip is I won't let you die. No, like most people survive coronavirus. The vast majority of people do. So your chances of survival are very high as long as you don't already have something like AIDS or a heart condition or lung condition or are very elderly. Just like the flu. It is just another type of flu, effectively. So it's not worth getting crazy scared over. I think that in the US, it's going to get hit a lot harder than other countries because of the culture here. So I think a lot of people who should be at home and self-quarantining will likely go into work otherwise. And people who should be seeking medical assistance and will not go getting tested because there have already been instances in the US where health insurance has failed to come through for people being tested for coronavirus, and they're getting a $3,000, $4,000 bill in the mail. I mean, can you imagine?
Well, this is one of those things.
You have coronavirus, you have this horrible disease, and also you owe us money for it. What the hell?
There's been a few things around that. The other challenge has been just in general. There's a lot of professions we have that don't get dedicated time off and stuff like that, and especially in our most interactive industries, things like the food industry and stuff like that, people you're most likely to actually touch or be around and stuff like that, that they are often very likely to be the ones getting sick and not able to go home and recover and will still be around people and therefore likely to infect others. So be smart. And yes, this is an opportunity where, not wanting to be overly political about it, but come on, US, we could do better when it comes to our medical care. And I'll leave it at that versus the dozens of options that are there.
Well, I would like to say I'm not necessarily going to leave it there. I'm not going to say you guys know I have problems with the healthcare system in the U.S. anyway. I mean, I could talk about that all day, no problem. I'm going to give it all an entire massive caveat. Let's just say that that's all fine, right? This is a near emergency situation with a disease or a virus which is going to spread amongst population and is going to kill people, right? I mean, not everybody, and most people will be fine, but it is going to spread. Why on earth are we encouraging a culture where it's going to be detrimental to the vast majority of society? I mean, the rich are going to be affected by this as well. This is not just like the poor are going to suffer. The rich will suffer as well because, as you said, the people who deliver food, the people who do the tasks that often are dealing with other people, often are the lower paid jobs who don't want to miss a day and be sick. they're not going to go and get tested. If they have coronavirus, we might never find out until it's spread to hundreds of other people already. Because why would they? Why would they possibly go and get tested? I wouldn't. I wouldn't take a day off work from having the flu-like symptoms. God's sakes. Right? If you were living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, you're not going to take a day off. If you have kids that are depending on you or whatever, you're not going to take a day off. You know, if you lose your job for not going in, you're not going to take a day off.
No, there's a lot of risk to it.
That's why you need to say this is an epidemic of some scale, and this is an emergency situation, and we will cover all coronavirus testing for anybody who goes in.
We don't have the mechanism in the United States to do it because we rely on private insurance. Simple as that, Ken. We can't.
The mechanism is like this: the government will pay for it,
but we can't do it. The government,
the check just goes to the government,
and it's not set up for the government to pay. It's that much of a mess. The overall system.
We'll just die then.
We do that already. The system has to be overhauled at a base level, and that is truth. And so it's not going to be something the government just fixes on its own here. People have to decide that healthcare for everyone is worthwhile. And make it a priority. Maybe this opens some people's eyes. We'll see. But regardless, it's time for us to take a break. Because we need you to listen to music. I need to refill a drink so that I don't have to leave the house and expose myself to other people's sickness. And we will come back right after this. You're listening to Show X on VTWProductions.com. We'll be back after this song. It's going to be an OC remix, which we always like to do. I kind of picked a random one. This is Dark Gift from Usus. And so I have no idea what this one's going to be about. But we're going to be back in about just under 5 minutes. So with that, you're listening to Show X, and we'll be back right after this.
Send in your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com.
There was no catharsis. My punishment continues to elude me. I simply am not there.
listening to Show X on btwproductions.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. So, it is time for us to start talking about things, I think, a little more geek. So let's go ahead and switch over to...
I'm a geek. Are you a geek? Geek cred, level up!
Ken, what have you been doing that's been geek this week?
Oh, so I've got a few things here, actually.
Hey!
Yeah, which is always good. Okay, so first of all, I finished reading Catch-22 by Joseph Heller this week. Now, that's with a caveat. Okay, I'm going to say something really controversial here. Because I admit it's a very good book, right?
Okay.
From what I read of it, it's a very good book. I can see why it's revolutionary. I can see why it's in the top 100 list of every, literature best top 100 books of all time lists, right? It is a very good book. And I was enjoying a lot of it. But I stopped reading it. Because while it was very well written, and the characters are very interesting.
Okay.
One, the comedy, and it is effectively a comedy, wasn't reaching me. Okay. Not because I think it was bad, but because it was really not my flavor. It was reminiscent to me of Dad's Army kind of humor. I don't know if you ever saw the TV show Dad's Army. It's a British, old British TV show. Let me find out how old it is. It's on Netflix, actually. It's got 8.1 on IMDb, 91% on Google reviews. And in World War II, with German invasion looming, the defense of Wilmington-on-Sea rests on the hands of the local bank manager and a motley collection of volunteers in the Home Guard unit. And it's basically just a bunch of old guys who are supposed to be, the Home Guard in case the Germans attack, And they're basically really ineffective at their job. And it's a comedy, and it's just very slapstick and silly. This feels like that, plus an element of MASH's craziness mixed in there. And that's all fine, and I don't mind all that. It's not really my thing, the Dad's Army kind of humor. The thing that really irked me was the setting of the story. So for example, in Ian Banks's book, I think it's Matter, I can't remember which one, he has two types of chapters. There are two different stories or the same story being told from different perspectives and different time that sort of collide at the end. So you read, instead of going chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you go chapter 1, then you have chapter X, then you have chapter 2, then you have chapter IX, right? And it's sort of like these two types of chapters overlapping each other almost. Okay. And they're from different perspectives. And by the end, it tells this big story of what happened, both with it being kind of a crazy thing that happened in the past and a crazy thing that's happening now at the end of the book. They together tell the story. And it was an incredibly well-written story. And the fact that it had this strange temporal element to the story was intrinsic to the story itself. It was important to be told that way. Otherwise, the story would have begun with here's the end.
Okay,
right?
Gotcha.
So it works really well. And it's kind of hard to follow at times, but it's worth it because it's such an amazing journey.
It pays off once you get it all together.
Catch-22 had this not quite the same storytelling. It feels, maybe I'm just wrong in not understanding it, and that's entirely possible. It feels like it's jumping back and forth in different times that things are happening. So, for example, at the very start of the book, they talk about this guy who's died, and then later on in one of the chapters, you randomly hear him talk, and you're like, why is he there? And I found myself struggling to follow the actual plot line, and instead I was focusing too much on the comedy and what was there and the initial stuff they're talking about. But it seems to be like it was just this haphazard structure of the story that was non-linear, which is fine in certain circumstances. But for this book, it just made me very confused, and I stopped not because it was bad and because I wasn't enjoying it, because I wasn't following it. I didn't really know what was happening in the story. I feel like I need to go back and listen to it again. But it's left a bad taste in my mouth, and it's one of these books that I should get back to, but I'm really struggling to. Gotcha. I have a rule for myself that if I put down a book and don't plan to read it for a long while, I give it a 3-star rating, because that's an indication for me personally that that's what that means to me. A 3-star rating means I may have been enjoying it. There are parts that I was enjoying it, but I couldn't finish it for whatever reason. And that's what I gave this book a rating for. And it's not because the story was bad. It's not because the characters were bad. It's not because the comedy was bad. It's not because the writing was bad. It was because me plus the story were not compatible from the looks.
Okay.
Not because it itself is bad. It's not you, it's me, Catch-22. That's kind of what I'm getting at, I guess. So I recommend it. Copy says Kitten's voice is cuter than mine.
There was the discussion about who did the intro and who did the break, or who did the segments.
They're both adorable for different reasons.
Yes.
Obviously.
We appreciate both of your support in our show.
So Catch-22, very good book. I'm glad I read it. It was Joseph Heller, the author, who actually coined the phrase Catch-22. So,
oh, wow.
I didn't realize that. I actually checked it on Google afterwards. But it's because, I can't remember the exact scenario. It's because a soldier wanted to get out of the army, and to do so, he needed to get a medical certificate to do so. But to get the medical certificate to do so, he had to be allowed to get the permission to do so, and he wasn't allowed to get the permission to do so. And it was a Catch-22. You couldn't possibly do it.
Gotcha.
Right, that's kind of the concept. And it comes up again and again. It's kind of a theme of the book that the army is just all about Catch-22s. So since then, I left kind of a bad taste in my mouth after that. So I felt like I really need to read something that I didn't feel like I had to read, but I wanted to. I took note of a book that was recommended to me on Reddit as a very good fantasy book with a nice progressive power line. So I really like progressive fantasies where the main character isn't just the same all the way through, but where they go as like start as either a villager or they start as, I don't know, an apprentice or something, and eventually they become, some super powerful being or whatever. I enjoy that. I get a kick out of that progressive fantasy. And so, this book, Black Prism by Brent Weeks, was recommended to me. And I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't look into it at all. I just said, okay, I'll take your suggestion, and then I got the book. Right.
Okay.
So it's really interesting magic system that that's different from most I've seen in the past, which is great. I love that because there's so many magic systems that are
it's tough to come up with new fantasy.
So in some ways it's similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay.
In the way that's based on elements of fire, water, earth, and air. This is instead based on light. So you can from light, certain magic users can craft items into the real world and use them. So, for example, people who can craft with red light can create fire and throw it.
Oh, okay, interesting.
People who can craft blue light are better making structures, let's just say. I don't really know for sure. And so on, right, throughout the whole spectrum of light. And there's one character in the book called the Prism who can, for 7, 14, or 21 years, is kind of a complex structure and explaining why, they can access all elements of light and can therefore, and their purpose on the world is to balance light, because if there's too many people working with red, for example, blue becomes empowered and red becomes very weak, and so on. So the Prism's job is to try and keep balance, and is also something of a pseudo-emperor of the world. The magic system is very interesting, not only because of the Prism, and that's why I said it's very Avatar, right? You have this one person who can do all the magics, but most people can't. You also have people in it who are polychrome or bichromes, as well as monochromes. So monochromes can deal like just red. Bichromes can maybe do red and yellow. There's also some interesting parts of this where if you're a polychrome, they're not the rarest thing, polychromes. They're pretty rare, but they usually have colors next to each other on the rainbow, right? So you have reds who can manipulate yellow, and orange, for example, is quite common for polychromes. But there are some who can also do, for example, red and blue, and that's quite rare for a bichrome, and so on. So it's quite a unique magic system. It's not based on you just use light and that's that. You need to actually have a source of light. So if you are a fire, you work with red light, you can work with an actual fire. So if there's a fire nearby, you can use the red light that comes off a fire to use your red magic. if you, I don't know, are blue and you're near the ocean and it's getting reflected off that, you can access your blue magic quite easily. So reflecting off of certain surfaces is very important. And what the magic carriers use is they have these glasses that they wear that are based on the color that they prefer to use, or like half and half colors if they have more than one or whatever. And then just from the sun's light, they can always be able to use their magic, unless their glasses get broken or whatever. Except for the prism, who doesn't need to use anything. They just need to have access to any light, and then
the whole spectrum.
Yeah. Now that's just that was me explaining the magic system, right? Why I've not read the whole book yet. I'm about halfway through. And let me just give you a brief overview of what my initial thoughts are without spoiling anything. I am really impressed by the author's ability to introduce a trope that you would expect in a magic fantasy setting, and then demolish it instantly. Like, okay, some very minor spoilers if you consider the first chapter spoilers. I don't. The main character starts off as a village boy, as you'd expect, right? Very standard. Who describes this beautiful tomboyish girl and these two friends, and he starts introducing these characters, and they meet quite far away from town. So you think to yourself, all right, they're far away from town. The village is going to get burned down, and they'll survive, and it'll be their adventure for the next 10 books, right? So that's what's going to happen. And the girl's going to be the love interest who disappears for a while and comes back, but eventually destiny will have them together. Nope, everybody dies except for the main character. Everybody. The girl, the romantic interest, the mother, the friends, the family. It just seems like everybody's dead.
Oh,
everybody.
So this
you see them.
This is a Disney book.
No, it's also quite like it's not. This is not like a young adult. I would say this feels very adult. When people die, they die gruesomely. Spikes through the heart and such. Like pretty gruesome stuff. What other tropes did he abolish? At the very start, one of the main character comes across a sorcerer, let's just say, who can do some magic, and this sorcerer says to him, "Oh my God, you're the boy from this village, and you can do some magic or whatever. We've been looking for you. You're destined to be like the king or something." And he's like, "What, really?" It's like, "No, shut up. You're just some kid. Like, why would you possibly be like, what are you talking about, you idiot?" And it's it was just really satisfying to hear, because again, Gandalf coming to the village and saying, "Oh, there's a big destiny. The journey begins here," or whatever.
Yes.
It's nice to see that being instantly abolished again. And it just seems to be, and again, we get introduced to the big villain at the very beginning, and you think, oh, he's clearly a baddie, because it describes how he's imprisoned his brother for a long time. Again, first couple of chapters, not really a spoiler. And you're like, oh my God, he must be a baddie. But then you go on to have this character start to get fleshed out over the next few chapters, and you actually start to like them, and you realize, oh wait, they do a lot of good in the book. They do a lot of good. Like they're mostly doing good. Maybe the imprisonment of this person is actually either a morally gray or actually a good thing, because they could have killed them instead, but chose to keep them in prison, and so on. So, or maybe there's actually just a morally gray scale here, and it's not all obvious. So thoroughly enjoying it. I found this is the first book I've read in all past 3-4 months where I found myself thinking about it when I'm not listening to it, which is really satisfying. That's a pretty
good sign.
Right, it's been quite rare. So that's all the reading I've been doing. I'll talk more about it next week. Be sure to friend me on Goodreads, and also sign up to our Audible. I'll put a link out shortly. I've been playing God of War.
Okay.
Because I am. Oh my God, this is one of my top games of all time. I couldn't recommend it more. If you have a PlayStation, get God of War. If you don't have a PlayStation, borrow your friends for a couple of weeks and get God of War, because this is one of the best games of all time. It's making me question. Like, I used to think one of my favorite game modes has always been an open world RPG.
Okay.
This is making me question if that's the case, because this is a linear storyline, kind of. Let me say branching linear storyline, with the ability to go back to where you've been as well to an extent. And I thought I would have hated that, because it just feels so, you're just forced along a path. That's dull. What if I want to go a different direction or whatever? Nope. This story is so expansive and interesting and emotionally investing that Kitten has played. We've done about 25, 30, 35 hours already in this game. And Kitten has watched the whole thing with me so far. This is unheard of, because watching somebody play a fighting game is so dull. right? It's the dullest thing is to watch somebody play a fighting game. This is a puzzle game, but mostly it's a story. It's an animated and interactive movie, and not in the sense that it's easy either. Some of the boss fights are pretty difficult, and I found myself just having the best time with this. Kid and I often talk about God of War when we're not playing it. We think of what's going to happen next. We consider what's going to happen in the story and who is really what and so on. So that's God of War, PS4. Check it out. 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 game. I have almost nothing I can think of that's bad about it. I really love the game.
It's that it's exclusive on PS4.
Exclusively on PS4. That's the bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how they get sales for PS4. I mean, honestly, if I had the money to spare and didn't have this game, I'd get a PS4 for this game. I would. Very good. I've been playing some League of Legends recently, past couple of days, and I've been getting bored of the fact that I love playing support. I love it. I really enjoy playing support. I hate the fact that I play well and it means nothing. It just entirely depends on how my team is doing.
Yeah.
And since I'm in bronze, it means that my team, generally speaking, is not particularly great. So my contribution, no matter how much I do, is only going to be a rather small percentage of how well we do in the long run. So I've decided to go for half and half, and I'm now playing aggressive support characters that can scale and do well. Since the past 3 games I've played as Fiddle, I've won 2 out of 3 of them so far. I did quite poorly today. We won that in the end, but I've won 3 out of 3. Yeah,
because I spectated some of that game that you were doing. Like, I guess when I first came in mid, where when I looked at it, you were pushed all the way back to the Nexus, and they had no towers down.
Yeah, no, we won that in the end.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's surprising.
It's because they had no dragons, and we got all the dragons. So we ended up getting the Dragon Soul, which means that we had a big buff, and then we just had better team strategy than they did. They were more powerful individual champions, but we had better strategy, which just shows that is important in League. And yeah, people were flaming all the way through that game, man. It was pretty horrendous. But I did really well in 2 out of 3 games. We won all 3, thankfully. But and now in my series promotion straight away after playing a more aggressive character. So that's been a good sign for me. Yeah, the other problem is that when you play such a squishy and aggressive character as Fiddle, you tend to either do really well or really bad. So as always, I'm trying to learn how to handle having a bad game. I usually snowball in one direction or the other. You know, I either go 10-0 or 0-10. It's not. It can be. Yeah,
say it can be hard when you're suffering that bad to take a moment and say, I need to back off, not jump in, wait. Like for me, it's usually having to figure out. Now, granted, ARAMs, who should be initiating or when I should go in the conflict. Right, where it's I keep getting nuked right away, so I really need to stop, wait a moment, take a breath for someone else to initiate it, and then jump in.
Yeah. Absolutely. In our ARAM before, I played Jarvan 4. That was my first time ever playing that character. Ever, which is rare for me. Most champions I've played at least once, but I have never played Jarvan because I don't know. I was always kind of intimidated by these bulkier melee characters because I always assume that they're, I don't know, the lower damage but higher tankiness is weird for me. I'm really good with tanky characters who are just tanks and don't do much damage. Yeah. I get that playstyle, and I get the ranged characters. I don't get melee bruisers, not my thing at all. So I was kind of concerned. I ended up doing okay. I think I went 5-10 or something, which in an ARAM. Well, I also had like 30 assists because I initiate a lot. But yeah, he was an okay character. I felt he was rather dull though and boring, but it was interesting to play somebody new.
Okay, that makes sense.
Last thing I wanted to mention is I played a little bit of Factorio this week, and I've actually started doing some more work on my. Yeah, well, it's tough. I always get to this one point in Factorio, like just when I start getting robots, where I'm like, I don't know. I kind of want to either start a new game or that, and I got to stop doing it. I got to break through this. So I'm
finish the game, Ken.
I know. I've finished it twice in the past, and that's it. So yeah, I need to get back into it and probably play again. I should also mention that Hando recommended a book to me, which to us actually, he says that we should both read it and talk about it on the show. Let me find it here. I've already purchased it on Audible, and I will listen to it after my current book. It's called Until the End of Time. It's by Brian Greene, and it's 14 hours long. It was released a couple weeks ago, so it's quite a new book. But I believe it's a non-fiction discussion on some interesting sciencey stuff that's going on just now. Until the End of Time by Brian Greene.
Okay.
So if you, I don't know if I've ever actually gifted you an Audible book before, but I think I can give you one free book if you haven't received one in the past. So I could send that to you if you'd like.
Well, I think you've given me one, but I don't know how it works.
Okay. Well, we can try, but we'll see. So yeah, we'll try and read that at some point, Ando, and chat about it. But we'll see how it goes, though. If not, I'll read it and describe it to Wayne otherwise. That is fine as well. Okay, sir. Sorry for taking up so much time as always. How has your geek cred been? What have you been up to?
Oh gosh, I don't have a ton to bring up, so it'll be fine. I got some recent communication when it gets into my creator space stuff that make me hopeful, but at the same time, I'm not sure. But I list it as I may eventually get my kickstarted M3D printer. And so this is one that I kickstarted, gosh, it was what, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago? And it was supposed to come out the next year or within like 6 to 8 months. And then delay, and delay, and delay, and then silence, like radio silence from the company. And then looking out where even the forum or where they had told people to initially go basically died. And then going through Reddit to try to find any conversation about the status of this printer. And getting little bits back of people saying, I don't know if the company's still alive. I don't know what's going on. Nobody's talking. And I'd done a couple like comments back saying, what is the status? I would like to know. And some 6 months ago, I got something that said, just follow us on our Discord channel, which apparently doesn't exist anymore. And so it's like, what is going on? So recently, within the last week, essentially, I got an email that stated they needed me to confirm my actual address because my M3D quad may be shipping in the next couple weeks, and said that it might actually arrive within about 8 weeks after updating and confirming all the information.
How weird that they would. It's very strange that they would first of all say that go radio silence and then suddenly ship it. I mean, you'd think that if they were getting close to, actually having some forward information to pass on, we've actually had some success.
Well,
they would share that info?
There was conversation that they were sending out groups of these, and the problem is I've seen in the wild, like on YouTube and stuff, looking up, I was trying to find any updates from people who'd received them. And the most recent video I've seen is like 9 months ago, where some of the very first backers had received some and their comments on it and how they weren't, some had the okay response. A lot were kind of like, this is just weird and we're trying to get it to work, but there's lots of issues. And so, no idea. And I had some expectation that this thing was going to come because it's trying to do something I have not seen another printer do, which is allow for full color filament-based 3D printing, and that it allows it to push 4 different colors into the same nozzle to combine the colors as it's printing. And doing so, it makes sense, right? It's just CMYK, and it just adjusts the speed of each motor based on the percentage of the color that you're putting into the nozzle to create whatever color layer. So
sounds good in theory.
Theory makes sense. Application, the fact that they're using these custom tiny stepper motors and stuff like that means there's a lot of potential for hiccups and failures and things like that.
So that's the thing with 3D printers, though, right? They're moving parts.
So much, and it's hot, it's electronics, all these things. And so part of me was not going to be all that surprised if this didn't go well, and if my goal was I should get something because I paid for it, right? And so with that, it was like, I'm okay if I get something and it's a bit of a hassle. I expect that. All my printers essentially have been a Kickstarter or something like that. And so I've been on the forefront of a lot of printers, and in doing such, I have suffered for them. I've learned a lot, but at the same time, I can't just go print reliably all the time. And so we'll see what happens, but I may actually get it. I'm excited. If it does happen, it'll be wonderful. And if I can eventually get to the point where I can print in full color, I will be dancing in my basement and happy. So we'll see.
Speaking of, sir, you've got something coming to you tomorrow. Keep an eye out for that.
Uh-oh. Concern, wonder, uncertainty. Yes. I do like that people are reacting to my kitty cam as Tetra is sitting there all bundled up in the seat. So that is for you. Enjoy. On top of that, then, talking 3D printing. The other thing I did is I had an opportunity to help my friend who runs Xenocat Artifacts, the business for adult toys in 3D printing, and what I've done in helping her out with some models and things like that. She recently picked up her own Prusa Mark III, or i3 Mark, whatever it is, Prusa Mark III, whatever generation, but the nice Prusa that's out there for a printer. And she followed my advice, which I'm happy to say, and bought the kit versus the fully assembled one, and spent like almost 2 full days building this thing from raw parts and wiring, putting it all together to get it working. I had recommended that path for anyone getting into 3D printing because you're going to learn so much in doing it. And
yeah,
at
that
some
seems quite
point,
sensible, actually.
3D printing is still hobbyist. And at some point, you're going to have to replace something, rebuild something, do whatever to maintain these devices. And if you've never done it, if you bought a kit that's ready to go off the box, you're going to have to learn reverse order of how to take something apart to replace when it's necessary. When you build it from the ground up and have to put and I was actually impressed because looking at her directions, it's a thick book of instructions. Like, I don't know how many pages it was, but in doing so, it does really require some intricate like part pieces where a lot of the parts in a Prusa are 3D printed. And so in doing so, they don't have the receiving end for like nuts and bolts to connect. So you have to take these nuts and bolts and either embed them in part of the print, like put them in from one side and screw from the other and hold it all together so it fits in there in order to get it to bind and actually pull. And in some cases, what they had is little slots in parts of the print that you put essentially a square piece of metal that has a threaded hole so that you can run a screw through from the other side. So you're having to press all these things into parts to literally assemble every piece. Because she says she spent probably 4 or 5 hours just assembling the overall extruder housing, like the overall everything that goes into the hot end and the motor and everything. I looked at it, I was like, dang, okay, that's a lot. I've done similar, but never to that degree of having to put every little piece in there. And so I kind of came over at the end of the process and helped her just finish the wiring and make sure it tucked right, and kind of it really helped out. Really, all I did was provide a second set of hands, because there are some moments where it's like you have to hold this while moving this thing to press in this to the board, and it just with just you as yourself doing it would be a significant pain. And so I was able to just lend her a hand. But really, what I was there for was for that initial, you got it all together. How do you print? Because she has never done 3D printing herself. And so I was able to get her up and going, get the filament loaded, all that, and kind of go through the last stages of calibration and getting the first test prints out on her bed. And I want to give her so much credit. She impressed me with how well she put it all together, and it worked right away. First print, first everything just worked. And I was like, dang, that's impressive.
That is impressive, man. I couldn't do that. That's super impressive.
She took her time. She said that she credits it to being somewhat OCD and really focusing on pieces, but she did an amazing job. I'm a little sad because it takes away potential business from me of doing commission prints, because now she can do them herself. But at the same time, I'm happy, like I've been with so many other friends, of increasing the number of hobbyists and enthusiasts that are doing 3D printing to improve the market as a whole. And so I get that mixed emotion of kind of like, yay, I won't be able to work with them anymore for that. But now it's more on a peer basis of discussing 3D printing, which I also really enjoy. So that should be a blast. So I wanted to throw that out. That was a lot of fun. And then I had my one piece of me doing stuff entertainment-wise that I thought was a lot of fun. And that is that I've been trying to binge through a lot, and it's mostly like watching something each night, of the anime Boruto, which is the anime Naruto, the follow-on series. It's the third generation, essentially, for Naruto. And I am on a sequence in Boruto, somewhere around episode 130, I think, where...
God.
Yep. Where Boruto has gotten to, through the means of different magic in the world, essentially, go back into the past and is actually running with his father through a sequence where he's trying to protect his father, Naruto, through what's going on. And for me, it's such a wonderful little bit of nostalgia, because admittedly, the characters in Boruto are blends of a lot of the main characters in the original Naruto series because of who essentially hooked up, who became parents to whichever child. And each child has gotten a blending of their abilities. And so with that, you're already getting kind of a sense of like, okay, this character really is like my old favorite, their parent or something. In this one, though, is great because you're seeing in Boruto through most of it the parents grown up and how they are now. And through a whole, again, 100-something episodes where you're dealing with the kids, And this just leading up to it was a lot of Boruto hearing about who he thinks of as his uncles, his elders and stuff like that, his instructors and such, what they were like as kids. And so it's been fun to see him go back in time and actually run around with them, which has been just, like I said, nostalgia, entertaining for me. It's like, yeah, that's how this character was back then. They were kind of useless at this point, and now they're pretty awesome. And so just getting it also through Boruto's eyes and his perspective, which I really enjoy. And so I've been watching that as an anime, my go-to-bed anime, as well as a bunch of other shows I've been trying to binge through and such. My Hero Academia Season 4, I've been trying to get through. I'm still watching Picard. Watched the 5th, have not seen the 6th episode yet, but enjoying that. And what other things?
I canceled my CBS after episode 2. I can understand. I thought I'd get back to it, but I just didn't care.
Well, there are all kinds of means to entertain yourself with media that's out there. And it's unfortunate that so many things have gone to this streaming mechanism to make you pick and choose. Because I believe you should only maintain so many subscriptions.
It's mostly to do with my time, right? I just don't really.
Oh no, absolutely.
Give it my time
it's prioritizing what we spend for it. It's why I canceled my WoW subscription. I realized I was not going to play it enough to justify paying a subscription. Totally understand.
I had a weak moment about a month and a half ago with it, and I told Copy I'm thinking about it, but I didn't.
Don't. I mean, do whatever you'd like, but that's okay. And so I'm still watching a bunch of those, but that's kind of what I've been doing. But really, I think that's all I've got geek-wise. I played a little bit of Star Citizen 3.82 just came out, the latest patch for it. So the Carrack is now playable in-game. I haven't done any tomfoolery since Game Fest in it. I just kind of loaded in today to make sure it worked. It did persist. I still have money in my account, which is nice. And so I didn't lose all the money with this as a full reset. They're trying to improve the persistence there. And I just ran a quick package delivery mission to make sure everything worked. Although I was warned by Pause that he logged out, logged back in, and then lost all his money. So we'll see. Although, and it looked like Campo and Pause today were out running around trying to scout another place for another race. And so we may do another race in the future between us on the ground, such wherever that might happen.
That was
next.
ridiculous.
It was so much fun. I mean, it took forever to do, but it was so much fun. So there's still some of that. Also, if people were watching at the beginning of the show when I was streaming what games I was playing, I played a little bit of ARAM and such, but I also just started Ori and the Blind Forest, which I know is way back there, right? Tom's played it, everyone's played like Ori and the Blind Forest. This is my first time, and man, is it pretty.
/r/patient gamers is a subreddit dedicated to people who play like well-known classics, right? Like
yes.
Not like Witcher 3, but like Witcher 1, right?
Yeah, the old stuff, yeah. No, this is one where, and the version I have is like the definitive version that came out, and that's part of it, right? I saw the announcement, as Tom's talking about now, that the previous Ori, or the sequel's coming out in what, a week? 2 weeks, basically? Yeah. A week and a half or so? There's actually a lot, and we should probably look at it. I don't know if we have time, but as we start talking news here, it's like what games and stuff are coming out this month, because there are actually a lot of good releases coming out this month, like big ones. And so we should probably bring that up. Let's see. So I'm going to look up March 2020 like game releases, because not only are we getting the next Ori, and actually let me go ahead and play the thing so I can feel like I did something. We will switch over, as it will, into. I hit the button. Come on. Oh no, it is thinking. Nope, it's being a butt.
Technology, news, and more today on the Geekoscope.
Anyhow, so Ken, go ahead and bring up what you have if you have any news this week. You seem to always got news for us, and I'm going to look for what games are coming out this month, because I know there's some good ones.
Sure. I've got a couple of things. This one is probably the one that's most interesting to me. League of Legends developer Riot Games is working on an FPS codenamed Project A, but recent details suggest it'll be titled Valorant. Now, a new screenshot of the game and several of its characters appears to have been leaked. Earlier this week, Respawn First pointed to a trademark for Valorant filed by Riot, as well as a Twitter account created about the same time as the trademark, @PlayValorant. The account is followed by a number of pro gamers and FPS streamers, despite being next to empty page, interestingly enough. Yesterday, a Project A fan account also posted what appears to be a leaked screenshot of the game featuring a character select screen for a character called Sage. Who looks like a sort of Oriental style female sorceress character.
Okay.
And she has. I'm not going to go into too much detail about who the character is. That screenshot, if legitimate, appears to confirm characters called Viper and Brimstone alongside a number of character portraits. This design for Sage appears to match up with previously shown Project A footage of a character that uses a green orb to summon walls and resurrect teammates. Sage's abilities shown in the image match that of the footage and place her as a functioning something like Overwatch's Mercy and Moira characters. So this, yeah, from what we're seeing of this so far, it does. That's what I was going to say. Is it does kind of feel Overwatchy to me, which is concerning, because yeah, League really did jump on the Dota bandwagon as Prime, which was great. But the Overwatch FPS versions of Battleground games, I don't feel they're too big. Smite being another one, of course, that was popular for a while.
Overwatch isn't actually that. It's more like the old Team Fortress 2. Overwatch is more just team-based, objective-based gaming, which is kind of like any FPS. Because we do know that Riot's putting out an FPS, they're putting out a card game, they're putting out, what was the other big one? An actual RPG adventure, I think it was? In the kind of all around the worlds of the characters within their game, within League of Legends, within that world that they've built. And so,
which is smart, right? I mean, if you put all your eggs into one basket, you'll eventually fail, right? Like it doesn't, like a single game won't last forever. Blizzard, but they've actually dealt with it as well, and that's why they have Hearthstone and such. So it's interesting to see. I wish them all the best. I hope it's something interesting, and I hope they follow the same model of it's free to play, but you can buy skins, right? That's always such a good model.
It'll be so very curious to see. They've done so much success with it. It'll be interesting to see what comes out.
I love that model because it means that we don't get filled with, like, mobile games could really learn from this. We have too many ads in these games or pay to win, and I hate that crap. I'd really love for mobile games to move towards the game is free to play. You buy
mobile games do not know how to do it, because the problem is mobile games are something you dispose of super quick as well. How often have you kept a mobile game beyond a month? I mean, I have some that are still on my phone, but the last time I opened them, I can't even recall. Like, the only ones I've kept that are mobile, that are real, are like my Words with Friends, because I play with my mother and like my aunt or something like that, and it's one of my, play once or twice every other day kind of games, and so that's something I come back to. But all these other games that I've actually enjoyed for some length of time, I played them for about a month, they lost their flair, I wasn't playing them, I deleted them. It's just mobile games are...
Yeah. I did the exact same thing with Grow Castle in the past week, because I picked it up and I was like, oh, I remember playing this years ago. Now it's so filled with microtransactions. And I was like, I can maybe get by it without doing any. I got to level 250 or something, and I was like, all right, this is feeling very samey. The enemies haven't changed in forever. And I just paid a whole bunch of money to upgrade to something that I could only actually get if I spend real world money. And it's like $12. I was like, I ain't doing this. Sorry.
Anyhow, so... Speaking of Riot Games, I'm curious to see what will happen with that, and we'll see once we get more information. Games that are coming out this month, I'm not going to go through the full list, but ones that I am aware of and excited for. The main ones I'm bringing up, but I just grabbed this list. You guys are welcome to check it out yourselves as well. But we already mentioned Ori, and this one and The Will of the Wisp is supposed to be coming out March 11th. Neo 2, which is another one of those very popular Series 1s, is supposed to be on PS4 on March 13th. Jumping through some of the other ones. Doom 64, which is an interesting one. Basically, it's bringing the version of Doom that came out on the Nintendo 64 and bringing it out to every other system today with some updates and better textures that were available in Doom 64, not any other version. So it's still the old classic Doom. But along with that, on March 20th, is Doom Eternal, which will be the next, basically the same engine or updates that from Bethesda that we got for Doom that relaunched in, 2016, I think was when the last Doom came out? Another one that a lot of people are hyped for is Animal Crossing New Horizons is coming out on the Switch on the March 20th. We also have, another one that I'm excited for, General Persona 5 Royale is coming on PS5 on March 31st. And there's some other ones in there. Another one, though, that I think a lot of people are hyped for, but we don't have the exact date for, is Half-Life Alyx for all of you VR users, which is going to be massive and cannot wait to see what happens with that. Looking forward a lot.
That's going to be the next big revival of VR, I think.
Well, I mean, VR keeps growing. We keep seeing more. I follow a lot of channels that do VR, so that's why I can speak to that to some degree. It's more active than people think. I mean, they sold out almost every headset there was available over the holidays. It's crazy. Like every single Oculus sold out, and like every Valve Index, every one of the older ones. I mean, everything sold out over the holidays. They're doing awesome. So yeah, we'll see what's coming out, but those are all coming out real soon. And then the other one, I thought it was coming out this month too, but I didn't see it on the list. And let's see, it was in that link earlier that Tom Bad Guy provided about the Final Fantasy VII countdown, because that was supposed to, but now it looks like it is worldwide on the 9th of April. So it has been pushed out of March by a little bit, which is the other massive release a lot of people waiting for, which needs to come to PC because, damn it, I don't want to buy a PS4. And so that's what we got with those. All right. What else do you got? Ken is almost out, but I want to make sure we get a little more news in today.
I have two I'd like to bring up because one's quite short, so I'll do both. First of all, CD Projekt Red is Europe's second most valuable games developer now, worth an estimated an accurate $9.52 billion. Which is, sorry, that's not true at all. I misread it. Sorry, Ubisoft is number one with 9.52 billion, but CD Projekt Red is worth $8 billion, which is madness. And not too surprising because they've not had many games out, but the ones they have been, top-notch, perfect games. And the second thing I wanted to bring up is PC Gamer. From PC Gamer, it's Doom Eternal can do 1,000 FPS.
Oh yes,
if you've got the hardware for it. Yeah. So back in the day of Quake and Quake 2, and probably other games, it was common for players to minimize graphical settings in order to maximize frame rates. Speed is life in online gaming after all. It's also great for bragging rights. If you can maintain a solid 30 FPS while the bullets were flying and the bombs were exploding, you were the real hero on the id Software forums. Things have changed somewhat since those long ago days when players used to console commands to remove Quake's frame rate cap. Speaking to IGN, id Software's lead engine programmer Billy Kahn said that the id Tech 7 engine has been dramatically overhauled for Doom Eternal, enabling bigger explosions, more vibrant-looking particle effects, and a ridiculous number of frames moving from your monitor to your eyeballs every second. On id Tech 6, we maxed out to 250 frames per second. This game, if you have the hardware right, it could hit 1,000 FPS. That's the max we have.
That's insane.
But of course, there's no monitor out there which could possibly, use it. And besides, we definitely people used to always make the jokes of, oh, we can't even see at 60 FPS. So why would you? Yeah, we can because it's to do with the merging of images, right? That's the reason that we can see at 60 FPS somewhat, and somewhat to 120. I have a feeling that 1,000 FPS is probably reaching past our prime of what we can actually tell the difference of. Kind of like sound quality, right? Like you can technically listen to FLAC files and or WAV files for audio, and technically it's better than listen to MP3s. But most people don't care and can barely tell a difference if at all. So, yeah, it's neat that they can do it, and I love the efficiency that they're putting into the game. That's neat. I really appreciate that, and I think most people do as well, because it means that if you are either on the low tier of tech available or the high tier, you've got a variety that you can it's customizable.
Well, on the other side of that means that if you could push, say, 1,000 frames per second, and you don't need to, right, then I could put more detail in the game and get it back down to a reasonable 120 frames per second or something like that, because I'm now rendering more things. And so if the engine is that efficient, that's awesome, right? That is so cool. And so I can appreciate that aspect of it, if nothing else. Let's see. Other than that, did I have anything that was this week?
Everything from me, sir.
I say I had little things back and forth, but not anything I think that was massive. I had news of it. One thing that I am very much looking forward to. I'll say this, and we'll end it here since we're at time. Is from Mashable. There was an article saying that Transformers is headed to Netflix in a new series, War for Cybertron, or which actually is not a series. This is a 3-episode anime rendition of Transformers, which I'm actually really looking forward to. The trailer they have for it is gorgeous, and in doing so, I cannot wait. It looks like the classic Transformers, but done in a very high-resolution digital style. And so I'm looking forward to that a lot. I've always loved Transformers, and that's one that's coming out soon. Yay, Netflix. Keep doing what you're doing. You're providing me so much good. So, all right. with that, it's time for us to end things. Yeah, it's been a quick 2 hours, which is always good and fun, and happy to have had all of you along for the ride. Really appreciate how many of you have been chatting with us today. It makes the show all the more interesting. Ken, could you do us the big favor and show us out today?
You have been listening and watching Show X live on twitch.tv/VTW Show X, or on Facebook by liking us on facebook.com and search for Show X. Thank you so much for watching, listening. Please do share the page, our Facebook or Twitter, and the show itself, our Twitch or YouTube, with your friends and family and such. Just drop a link on your Twitter. Don't need to explain it. Just drop it there. Just put it in there. We appreciate it. You can also support us by going to patreon.com/showx and dropping us $1 a month. We don't do this because we want your money. We do it because we want your money for a specific purpose, which is keeping the show afloat. We are constantly trying to think of how we can minimize our costs here while maximizing how good the show is, which is why we're not constantly drinking away all your money into beer, which we would otherwise. You can also support us by sending in your emails to showx@vtwproductions.com. Tell us what you've been up to in your geek cred. We'd love to read it out and chat about it and such. Also, feel free to send us in news articles you want us to talk about. We're happy to do that as well. You can follow us on twitter.com/VTWShowX, twitter.com/DocDead, and twitter.com/DrKenReed for the show, for Mr. Wayne, for myself. You can check us out on reddit.com/r/showx. Be sure to subscribe and join our subreddit. They will every week our episodes are auto posted there by my account. I don't do anything about it. I just post them there by magic. Please do upvote them and comment in there if you want to chat about anything in the show that you didn't chat about during the show. We'll try and kick off a discussion there. We'd appreciate that as well. Hope you all have an amazing next week, and don't catch any coronavirus. And we'll see you all next week.
Yes, wash your hands and everything else around you. We appreciate it. We want to keep you here. With what Ken said, there will be some things coming up where I think we're going to be letting go of the actual named, or we'll change maybe the Versus the World Productions website, since we don't really hang out there much. As well as maybe some of the emails where maybe we'll give up the showx at VTW Productions, just go showx@gmail or something like that. We'll figure it out. Other ways to minimize our costs, but yet deliver all the same content to you. So you might see some of those changes coming up. If you do, we may note it in the Reddit, so follow along there. But with that, you've been listening to ShowX on VTWProductions.com, and we are out of here for the week. So thank you all, and we will catch you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. See you next zombie.